So hello everyone. Thank you, Olga. Thank you for inviting me and for organizing this webinar. I actually highly appreciate this opportunity to share our archiving experience with this community of professionals in web archiving, especially because this field is relatively new for me. I very much look forward to hearing your feedback and questions on what I'm about to present. So let's start with the question, what is Telegram Archive for us? So for us, Telegram Archive is a responsive archiving initiative that started basically as an act of professional and civilian resistance to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And our intention was to capture a web fragment of our wartime reality with an aim to create a long-term historical record preserved for research in the future. I will briefly describe the context of its emergence and show some examples of what's in there. And then I will outline our decisions on collecting data and our concerns regarding access. So how did it start? As was already mentioned, I'm personally based in Lviv, which is in Western Ukraine, 60 kilometers from the border with Poland. Although it's approximately 1,000 kilometers to the front line, missile attacks are a constant threat here as well. So during the last 6 months, Lviv was hit several times by rockets. But the damage is not as heavy as in the cities closer to the front line or those under the occupation. During the first weeks of the invasion, Lviv became a transient point for displaced people escaping from the warfare. And it still remains a shelter for thousands of internally displaced people and one of the main logistics and humanitarian aid hubs. I work at the Center of Urban History. This is an academic institution working mainly in the field of urban history, but also broader urban studies, interdisciplinary. And we try to combine academic research with public outreach activities. My main responsibility here is digital history projects and creating digital history projects aimed at creating public outreach publications about the history of this very city, the city of Lviv or Lvov or Lemberg or many other names, as was already also mentioned. As the war began, military mobilization and humanitarian aid became the main tasks to do instead of research or public outreach activities. So the center transformed its conference room that you can see on the picture, exhibition hall, and a small cafe that we used to run into a short-term shelter for displaced people. It was open to people until the end of July. Only a month ago, we had to close it down. All this time, our staff took special shifts to take care of the shelter in addition to our regular responsibilities. And additionally, with support from partner institutions, we started to launch residence fellowships for colleagues and academics escaping from the war, giving them an opportunity to live and work here. Only then, when those first humanitarian aid initiatives were launched, with the support, all these support initiatives have been set up, we start thinking of professional activities that we were able to launch under these dramatic circumstances. As mostly historians, our team discussed documenting this war as one of the main tasks that we can ourselves do. So 4 documenting initiatives were launched. First, collecting oral history testimonies, talking with people, asking about their experiences. Then collecting visual materials, photos, both professional or amateur photos, asking people send us their materials that they would like to share for the archive. Also collecting diaries and dreams of the war with a group of students. And the 4th initiative was the one that I'm mostly involved in, which is Telegram and Web Archive. So why Telegram? As we were present at the moment, present within this moment, almost immediately it became clear that the use of Telegram increased rapidly since the beginning of the invasion. There was an understanding that it would become the main source of information for thousands of people, and the audience would be as diverse as the country is. First, it was visible from the number of downloads, but then also the sociological surveys proved it. There is a specific context for its use in some countries, use of the Telegram. In the Netherlands, for instance, there is a context of using Telegram for networking on various conspiracy theories. And there are some articles about that. The same is often associated with Telegram in Germany. For many countries, Telegram is not popular at all. But in Ukraine, this context is much broader, covering a wide spectrum of discourses and data practices, especially from the beginning of the full-scale invasion. In the first 2 months of the war, 76.6% of Ukrainians turned to social media as their main source for news. And Telegram actually was the most popular of them, as you can see on this graph. 65.7% of people use Telegram as the main source of information. This is the survey that was done in May this year. So what do we collect? What is in the archive? From the archiving point of view, it was also a particularly interesting platform to archive, as chats and channels in Telegram cover updates from multiple towns and regions across the country, bringing a hyper-local or topic-specific perspective on the war developments. It's just another opportunity to capture how different war experiences are somewhere in Mykolaiv in the south of the country, or Bucha north of Kyiv, the capital, or Lviv in the west of the country. These are like local agendas, and local perspectives on these war experiences are really different, and it is Telegram channels are one of the sources to see this myriad of experiences. Russia's airstrikes and missile launches are regularly accompanied by Telegram messages as well. Such messages are often disseminated to compete in speed with missiles. For instance, there is a local Telegram channel in Mykolaiv, a town in the country's south, they mentioned. Russian armed forces failed in taking the city, so the front line more or less stabilized a couple of dozen kilometers south of it. It's been heavily bombarded since then. Most of the strikes are launched from the occupied Kherson, a city further to the south. Distance between Kherson and Mykolaiv is 60 kilometers, with the front line between those two cities. So when rockets are seen over Kherson, aiming towards Mykolaiv, Kherson residents have some time to inform subscribers of the Mykolaiv channel about spotted rockets. Sometimes this information comes faster than official air raid alert. Many channels show how Telegram was important, especially in the first months of the war. For instance, before the warfare front line stabilized, there were also chats where people used to share updates about the safest evacuation routes from the occupied territories or the most endangered regions to the territories controlled by Ukrainian government. But people also use Telegram to search for their close ones who were missing because of war. They post personal details and circumstances of their missing relatives with the hope of getting any news about them. As thousands have faced not just a physical threat because of war, but a severe psychological crisis, volunteers created chats to offer first psychological aid for those in need. By monitoring all these channels, you can see how crucial these communication flows were in the first months of the war to maintain emergency communication on such a scale. Along with a broad representation of war-related topics in Telegram, the warfare itself is happening there. It is used by several volunteering groups that mobilize themselves to coordinate cyber attacks on Russian websites. Administrators define targets, and all participants simultaneously use dedicated software to impose DDoS attacks. Targets are usually related to official Kremlin websites, the Ministry of Defense, financial or logistics infrastructures, news media, and online streaming platforms. These groups often share data leaks of Russian officials and the military. While available to the general public, their activity in Telegram is regularly deleted either entirely or in part. Some traces of their activities probably do not exist beyond our archival collection anymore. There is also a huge topic of open source intelligence conducted on Telegram, or propaganda and fake dissemination, and we have separate collections in that. How do we collect materials? When we started this initiative, what we didn't have was previous background in web archiving. Skills and knowledge on tools, we basically didn't have that. We didn't know what software to use on automatizing data harvesting, for instance, how to use API or something like that. What we did have was a pretty straightforward Telegram interface, allowing manual export from any chat or channel by default. You can see it on the screenshot in my presentation, which is pretty easy to define what and in what way you would like to export from a specific chat or channel. And we also had a group of people willing to contribute to the initiative. So with having these Telegram features, we can export to our institutional servers all text, voice messages, videos, photos, and files directly from channels and chats. We can choose a time frame. We usually set it from 24th of February, and the output format. There are HTML or JSON options available. We try to save a complete flow of messages in HTML format. We are interested in the entire sequence of posts from chats or channels, not in a selected part of it. As for now, there is a group of 4 people involved in collecting data. Invited archivists have backgrounds in history, journalism, and media studies. They originate from regions that were largely affected by the war. Hometowns of people from this group were either occupied by Russia or heavily bombed. Now they are based in different towns in Ukraine or other countries. As channels disappear, and the nature of social media messages is quite fragile, especially in circumstances of war, we keep collecting data as one of the priority tasks for 6 months now. The number of archive channels has already reached 1,000 with over 4 terabytes of data. In the meantime, we try to do quality analysis, which a few times resulted in reharvesting data. For instance, it became clear that some channels have created internal chats for interactive communication with the audience. These chats enable a valuable opportunity for capturing broader discussion among people, especially in local context of urban channels. Therefore, we decided to repeat data export for such channels along with internal chats included. From the beginning, we started structuring content into thematic collections and preparing metadata to enrich the context of how this data was published and then exported. Each channel or chat is considered an archival entity and is registered in the index of entities. For each entity in the registry, we prepare a description and metadata, ID, original title, URL, post frequency, number of followers, type of audience, original description, and archival description prepared by archivists, keywords, creation date. We also try to assess the sensitiveness of the content. Thematic collections are quite broad. We have data from official and news channels to volunteer chats, from war diaries and artistic reflections to military and political blogs, from cyber attacks to local urban chats in the occupied territories. We try to create a collection on war and gender, economy and agriculture. We also capture some channels related to Russian bordering regions and Belarus, as it is very much war related in the context of the war in Ukraine. In total, there are 25 collections so far. The scope for the archived content was prioritized considering such conditions as relevancy to the war developments in Ukraine, publicly available content, everyday routine practices or local developments less visible in the official or mainstream media, regional and social diversity, risk of deleting content, and Telegram-specific data and communication practices affecting the word development itself. We also try to react to the ongoing developments to shift our focus. We stopped archiving some channels due to their irrelevancy or lack of original content, and some are being archived with less priority. The main emphasis for now are channels from different cities, allowing us to see the agenda locally and also go beyond an understanding of war as battlefield developments report or official military statements only. We also prepare archival notes in order to document all the issues we are going through and the decisions we make to resolve them. Eventually, we plan to conduct interviews with each archivist. This would allow us to make a summary report on the context of the archival process. There are ethical and legal complications we need to resolve at the stage of setting access. These tasks are still ahead of us and are honestly the most complicated part of us, the most complicated part for us. As I mentioned, no previous web archiving experience and limited institutional capacity raise a set of challenges for us in this regard. So we are here very open to any potential advisory or cooperation on access protocols and infrastructures. Telegram's privacy policy is relatively liberal in defining a boundary between public and private data. Publishing and exporting data is not that much regulated in Telegram. In most cases, exporting content from chats and channels is available to anyone by default, and it is as easy as I showed you on the print screen. Telegram itself barely maintains any content moderation. On the one hand, it allows harvesting the data extensively. On the other hand, this requires from archivists more comprehensive policies in public and private in order to capture, store, and set archival access to the data. So now we try to align it with two guiding principles for setting access standards according to the guidelines from Digital Library Federation, which is it may potentially cause harm if access is not provided carefully. And the second one, it is unethical to limit access unnecessarily. So we do not collect any personal data from user accounts. Neither do we collect private chats from hyperlocal or private groups like chat of friends, neighbors, or work chats, even though they actually bring a lot of relevancy when it comes to historical evidences. They are pretty valuable. But these chats are either private or highly sensitive. So we collect only public channels and groups accessible for anyone to join and follow. Anyway, users still systematically or occasionally reveal various pieces of personal information like names, phone numbers, in those chats and channels. Given the circumstances of war, photos of dead bodies, human remains, evidence of atrocities and destruction, are omnipresent in most of the chats that we archive. Therefore, we decided not to make collected data accessible until we are able to identify and secure any sensitive content or personally identifiable information and develop respective infrastructure for setting remote access. As for now, we can only consider access to the archive locally at the center. Either way, access will be moderated and granted only upon certain registration and accepting terms of use. It still might be nuanced depending on the topic and content sensitivity, so some parts of it might be unavailable for a long time. Another ethical concern raises the issue of the author's consent. Consent or any formal agreement with the authors is not technically possible for this archivic initiative, but we still are thinking about raising awareness about what we do among those whose data we archive. We would like to reach out to administrators who run corresponding channels and groups so that to the best possible extent inform them and group members about the initiative, its aim, the format of access, and its potential use. We are also thinking of stating the open-ended possibility for individual or potential copyright holder to opt out data published by them or personally affecting them. We hope this will set up the right balance between respecting privacy and securing historical records for future research. No less challenging for us is a proper digital infrastructure, allowing us to secure collected content and develop moderated access infrastructure for interested third parties. So far, we are only able to store it as a repository of archived files locally, with a respective spreadsheet registry describing metadata for each channel or chat. Archiving Telegram channels has another peculiarity, not only in terms of content, but also software. The source code of the Telegram app is open. Therefore, we would not only like to archive the data, but also the source code of the interface for this data to be presented. It would allow us to preserve not just the content, but also the context of how it was published. One of our ideas is a Telegram emulator, allowing us to navigate through the archived content with an interface close to the original, but this is still just an idea. As for now, we are looking for best practices advisory or partnership to develop a better understanding of how to create and maintain access to the archived collections. There is also an intention of setting up a working group to collaboratively find the best solutions for this particular data. Therefore, we are very much open to any kind of collaboration in this project. This would be all from my side. In closing, I would like to just mention that this archiving initiative wouldn't have been possible without support from the Center for Governance and Culture in Europe at the University of St. Gallen. And thank you for your attention.